Welcome to the Millennials and Community Podcast. On this week's show, join Matt and Carlo as they explore what having a side hustle looks like in today's world, how to decide whether you actually need one, whether it's out of necessity or passion, and with the right motivations, how you can explore almost any pursuit. Thank you for being part of our community. And welcome to another episode of the Millennials and Community Podcast. I'm Carlo. That goofball over there is Matt.
What's up, everybody?
Super excited to have you guys here for another episode. All right, so before we dive into our episode, Matt, we're going straight into our opening icebreaker. Share a childhood dream job that you never pursued.
Yes, I think that at least the first job that I remember being interested in as a kid was architect. It was something, there's just something about the creative design process around like designing and then realizing and actualizing a building that would then your work would be like immortalized if you're good and it doesn't fall down. That was something that I really was interested in and was super into. Ironically now, managing any sort of like infrastructure project or like a brick and mortar facility of any kind like terrifies me. So, we grow up and we learn.
Maybe you weren't suited for it.
Yeah.
For me, it was that childhood trope. I wanted to be an astronaut. I have always, and up until this day, absolutely loved the concept of space travel. But unfortunately, I was not smart enough. I never went to the military. I never became a pilot, yada, yada. I didn't fall into category even remotely possible to become an astronaut. So
you're just partially stellar, not fully interstellar.
There's some things you just said that are quite wrong, but so we're just going to ignore it and move on.
See, I didn't want to be an astronaut, so I don't know.
That's true. That's true. All right, guys. So on this week's episode, we are going to talk about something that is very quickly becoming a part of a lot of millennials' lives, and that is the idea of gig work, or kind of in a more broad term, like a side hustle, a side business, another job. Because let's face it, right now, everything is expensive. And a lot of us are being forced into second or even third jobs just to kind of keep a roof over their heads. Now, I certainly hope that that's not the case for too many people out there that are listening to this show, but it is a reality. And I think it's important that we talk about it, because if we're going to do it anyways, let's have it be something that benefits our lives in multiple different spots. Now, this is an intriguing episode because, and we've talked about some stuff like this before on our show, but it's an intriguing episode because both of us have our own side hustles. So, Matt, do you want to share a little bit about what you would consider to be a side hustle in your life?
Yeah, 100%. And we've talked about my dance fitness work before, but certainly the dance fitness program that I teach, I would consider a side hustle. The work that I do in emceeing and motivating different events, I would very much consider a side hustle. Number of different things that I've got going on, and a few more that are kind of in the incubator right now as we speak. And so, the reason why this topic is really front and center for me right now is, and I didn't even mention my professional speaking, but the reason why this is so front and center for me right now is I just feel like the balance is really challenging when we're always hustling and we're always working, and the classic trope, you talk about work-life balance. Well, now we're starting to talk about like work life balance, and it's just like, I think it's worth having a conversation about not only how do we do it well, but how do we like balance it with other components, like what are we doing it for?
Yeah, and I totally get that, because so in terms of me, I I like to think of myself as multi-passionated. Right. And
Sorry, one more time.
Multi-passionated, mostly multi-passioned,
but only like semi-Englished.
See. So like I very often fill my life with a lot of different things. And as I've said in past episodes, I like to have those extend into other ways as alternate income paths for me. So We've talked about it in a couple past episodes, but I do a lot of work in the financial education space. And while I don't know that I would consider that to be a side hustle, I would consider it to be a business that I'm building alongside of some of my other pursuits. And I know that's a question some of our listeners had Carlos teaching us everything about money. Is that truly what he does? Well, yeah, it's definitely a very large part of my career. I've talked about in the past about my 3D printing, and while that isn't something that I have like regular sales ongoing, I love to, build or create something cool and then find somebody that would enjoy that in their collection. The podcast doesn't make us any money, but I would consider this to be something that has the potential to maybe pay for itself and expand. And so there's a lot of things that I do. And like Matt said, there's a couple in the burner as well that I don't even want to think about when I'm going to find time for those. But when you have so many different things, it does become a how do you balance it all? And I'm going to jump right into the idea for me is that the balance is something that ebbs and flows. I have worked very, very hard to have my side pursuits be things that I find passion in. It's not just something I do for money, right? Now, if you've got a side hustle that you do just to pay the bills, then that's really all it is. And that might be all it ever is something that pay the bill. But I am blessed enough to find things that I find passion in, and that passion will ebb and flow. So when it's in its high points, I tend to devote more time to that one particular pursuit. When it's in its low points, I might find something else to take the majority of my time. So do you find you ebb and flow through these things, or is everything kind of on an upward trajectory that's constantly requiring more from you?
Yeah, it's a really good question. This is something that I'm actively trying to work through. As I mentioned, there's a couple of like potential opportunities that are in the hopper, distilling away in really beautiful like oak barrels. I'm not becoming a distillery or a brewery.
Why not?
I don't know. They're just like the booze acronyms, the booze metaphors.
Hustle as a sampler.
Oh man, can you imagine like just a flight of hustle?
Wow.
That's actually what my career feels like. It feels like a flight, like a tasting flight.
That's a really good analogy. I like that.
So let's take that analogy a little bit further, and it really kind of well articulates the thing that I'm struggling with right now. You talk about ebb and flow, but I also, and I agree, there's certainly times and opportunities where a certain opportunity will take more of my time, and that naturally is going to come at the expense of another project. That might have to sit on the back burner for a little while. What I find for myself, though, in my brain, it becomes really, really challenging when it feels like all of the ideas, all the professional endeavors are like four fat guys trying to get out of the same room at the same time. And it's just like, you love the idea of saying just one guy go and then the next guy go, but there's the same like delicious smelling pie on the other side of that door. And so they're all trying to...
He's back on the food analogy.
I had to do a pie callback. I had to do it. Okay. If you don't get that joke, you haven't listened to enough of our episodes. So be better subscribers. So I guess I'm really kind of struggling with that. I'm also struggling with this balance of like, when do I consider it a side hustle? When does it deserve to have elevated priority? So I guess like one of the first things that I would ask you is like, at what point does it shift from being a hobby to a side hustle? And then maybe like, does the fact that you're earning money from it, is that the sole determinant in whether it gets prioritized above and beyond a hobby?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I would say that the moment you start making money from it does not determine it's now a side hustle. Because you can have the odd one-off thing that you do turn into a little bit of money. Like you think about people that do arts and crafts and create things. It is just because, somebody really liked your work and you created that one thing and sold it doesn't mean that will be an ongoing thing. So I like to think of it as the moment you now have an obligation to your clientele, it becomes an actual side hustle. becomes the potential for an actual business. So you've put yourself into a position where people are coming to you for your expertise, for your product, and you start to actually promote it as a business, promote it as a brand, right? So, I can say, hey, I make some 3D prints that I turn around and sell, but until I label it as Prometheus printing, which is what I've called my little endeavor, it wasn't a business until I decided to like actually open it up for business.
So tease that out for me a little bit more. So for my speaking gigs, for example, there'll be organizations that contact me for a one-time gig. So last year I had a couple of gigs in Lethbridge, one in Edmonton, several in and around Calgary. Now some of my clients, they'll hire me to do workshops every year. Some of my clients are just one-time clients. And understandably, like a lot of organizations look for professional development and their themes rotate. So they're not necessarily in the market for annual sessions of the type that I facilitate. So, in that kind of dichotomy, I know that I promote myself as a business, but at what point does the obligation to clientele depend on it being like repeatability?
Well, but there was a very clear-cut point for you in that where you're like, I created a website.
It's true.
I created a website. So you had that mental shift where you're like, this needs to be something that either somebody who is looking to hire me for the first time or is looking for somebody in my space can find me.
True.
So the moment that you put yourself out there, you became obligated and responsible to the people that found you to put your best foot forward and create a good talk and a good session, right? So you could arguably say that before you put that website out, before you said, yes, I'm open to these things, it was mostly just a trial run for you. Right?
So how do you know that you've picked the right side hustle?
Oh, you don't. Ever.
You don't?
Ever.
Ever?
Ever. Ever. Let me put it to you this way. So we're going to talk a little bit about in specific, maybe one or two of the side hustles that we find a lot of passion and a lot of stuff in. So mine for sure would be my work in financial education. I started in that industry at 16 years old. Now you cannot get a license to work with people's money until you're 18 in Canada. So when I turned 18, I went and got my license, but you know what? It turns out that an 18, 19-year-old doesn't get taken terribly seriously when he tries to tell you how to manage your money.
Fair enough.
And the only people that would take me seriously were other people my age who couldn't care less about where their money's going for retirement, more about where their money's going for the next shot, right? So I have spent a large amount of time in that industry at points where it was arguably secondary to other career paths. And it has taken a very long time to build up my knowledge, to build up my client portfolio, to build up the partnerships I have in the industry. And even after all of that work, it is still questionable sometimes to me, is this the right path? Did I do this right? Did I build it right? Am I marketing myself correctly? And the only thing that keeps me going in those moments is my passion for what I do there. So there may come a point in the ebb and flow of everything that after all the work that you've put into this, you may go, you know what, maybe this isn't it. Maybe I want to try something else. And that might mean abandoning what you started working on, or it might mean that you just put it on the back burner for now. But I think that's the wonderful thing about being entrepreneurial minded, is that you can constantly try new things if you want to until you find the one that clicks for you. So trying to put the label of, yes, this is it, is really difficult to do. And I know that in some capacity, there's the concept of burning your ships, burning the boats, right? I don't know if you guys have ever heard the story of, and I don't know in specific, but it's, this great warrior takes his fleet of boats across the ocean to go and attack this neighboring country. And when he gets there, he immediately orders the destruction of all of the ships that brought his group over, right? And when they say, well, why are we destroying our ships? He says, because we either win or we die here, which is a wonderful leadership story about perseverance. But when you're looking at the idea of building a business or a side hustle, that's a really do or die mentality. And we don't necessarily live in that kind of world right now. When you think about the opportunities that are available to us to grow and build side hustles and side businesses, I think you have the opportunity to experiment a little bit, right? So I don't think you ever truly hit that point where you're like, I picked the right one. Maybe you will, maybe out of some sort of massive success. But what I will tell you is most massively successful business owners I know, the moment one business succeeds, what do you think they do? They start another one, yeah. And they start another one, and they start another one.
Well, and so, okay, so there's a couple of things that I wanted to touch on with that. I mean, I think, first of all, I think having a side hustle and being entrepreneurial are not necessarily the same thing.
No, true.
I think you're right. Certainly people that are entrepreneurial minded probably are more likely to build something. But if that's the case, then the side hustle isn't in fact the business, it's building businesses. And I think that's the mentality of a lot of entrepreneurs is the hustle that they enjoy, that they're passionate about, is the opportunity to see if they can build something from scratch. Yes, there is subject matter. There is something that they're starting, a topic, a reason, a product, a service. But entrepreneurs at heart are like just addicted to the grind of building and seeing if they can create value seemingly out of nothing. Now, where I think that differs from side hustles is I think that there can be that duality where the side hustle itself could be building businesses, and so entrepreneurship could be a side hustle. But I think there is the opportunity to achieve like some sort of mastery in a thing. I think about dance play, the dance program that I teach, and I never really intended for it to be a side hustle. You get trained in this thing, and I had always worked with kids, and so it was kind of a no-brainer in terms of, like, it was the perfect storm for me in terms of a really beautifully designed, intentionally thought out program that elicits playfulness, which all of you know I'm all about. It's a way to combine playfulness, physical activity, and social connection in a really, really meaningful, intentional way, in a way that breaks down barriers in all sorts of ways. All things that, again, if you've listened to any episodes of this, I hope that you know about me, are all things that I'm incredibly passionate about. So you take that and it just becomes the perfect storm, because then you're able to go and do the thing that you care about, that you're passionate about. And then I've been able to make really, really, in terms of like what a side hustle is, I've been really successful in what I've been able to do, like over the course of the time that I've taught dance play. And there was only, I think there was a 2-year window where it was my full-time job. But having said that, all told, I've made well over 6 figures teaching dance play as a side hustle in the time that I've done it. And that to me comes from the passion, and I know it's the right side hustle for me, because not only does it's the combination of the things that I love, that I'm passionate about, but it also happens to be the perfect storm of things that I'm really good at. Right? It's activating and motivating a group of people. It's animating spaces. It's working with kids or adults. It's like the things that I know I'm really good at and the things that I really care about. And it just so happens that there's a niche there where I'm able to make money doing it.
Okay, so here's the thing, because I think that there's a couple different sides that we can come to or come from with the question that you've asked. Because the question you asked is, how do you know you've picked the right side hustle? Well, what does that mean? What does the right side hustle mean? So if you're looking at it from the very clinical, I need some extra money at the end of the month side hustle. Well, is it the right one for you? Does it accomplish financially what you were looking for? Right? So if you're like, I need to make an extra $1,000 this month, and you decide to go drive ride share, deliver food, get a retail job, something along those lines, if it provides you with that $1,000 that you needed, then it was the right one for you. Okay. But I don't really think that that's what either of us wanted to talk about today. I think what we were talking about is when you are deciding to pick that side hustle, maybe you're not doing it purely out of financial obligation. You're doing it because, like, yes, I need to make an extra $1,000, but I'm not so financially crunched right now that I can't have a spool time on this. I can't figure out a couple things. So in that regard, I think that the right one is going to be the one where you have the proper balance between passion and financial success. Because to go back to the idea of when does a hobby become a side hustle, a hobby is something that for the most part will cost you money. Okay. It will be something that, like, when I think about my 3D printing, I could buy an endless supply of 3D printing filament. Oh, well, it's just $30. Oh, it's just $35. How many different shades of yellow do I need? I don't know, but I could always have another, right? A side hustle can become something that makes you money. So there is going to be that tipping point, hopefully, if that's your goal, where something, that filament for me doesn't turn into another shade of yellow. It turns into another product offering. It turns into another way to satisfy the need of a client. Again, that obligation to the clientele. Okay. So I totally get where you're coming from. And I think, I guess my question for you is, when it came to dance play, from what I remember of the story, you were invited to do this, correct?
Yep.
Right. So when you started out doing this, did you look at this as something that you would say, well, I'm going to use this to make a little bit of extra money? Or did you look at it as a fun opportunity that would also make you some money?
It was a fun opportunity that was maybe going to add to my professional practice of the things that I was already doing. I didn't look at it from a money standpoint. When I received the training, it was within the scope of my salaried role at the time. So it was a tool that I was going to be able to use in the context of my salaried role, aka I wasn't going to get any more money from it. Then it emerged as an opportunity to travel for free, right? Mm-hmm. I got the opportunity to travel all across Canada, everywhere from like Yukon Territory to Newfoundland, even down to South Carolina, and now Mexico, actually, all under the dance play banner. And it wasn't until I started to see the demand and the impact for it that I realized, like, hey, there's also an opportunity to make money here at the same time.
So arguably, it was a hobby that transitioned into a side hustle.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wouldn't consider it a hobby. I would consider it like a tool. Sure. I think of dance play, this may be a little rudimentary. I think about dance play as a trade, right? I think of it as a tool that I'm able to use to, like a wrench, a hammer, a screwdriver. It is a tool that I employ that's able to accomplish certain outcomes. And not all of those outcomes are monetary, but I can create money as a result of using this tool.
Okay. See, this is such a nuanced topic, right? Like, you can look at it completely utilitarian, or you can look at it as completely passion driven, but in reality, it's kind of a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Right. And, it's important to kind of bring this back and think about, why is this so relative? Why does it have such a big impact to millennials? Well, because we say this all the time, we're this generation sandwiched in the middle, right? We are one of the first generations that is, or the first generation that is not financially as well off as our parents were at the same point in life. So out of necessity, a lot of us have created businesses or side hustles to pay the bills. At the same time, we are watching a lot of our elderly parents pick up these hobbies and these things that keep themselves busy as they enter in retirement. And we're going, well, that's kind of neat. So we're picking up these passion projects. Sometimes we're also looking at it as a way to disconnect ourselves from the craziness of the world. There's so many millennials that are creating homesteads and raising chickens and farming and trying to provide for their own food because they're dissatisfied with the way the world is doing it. So, you know, again, it comes down to this idea that like, hey, we're very busy, but we feel a need, we feel a draw for one reason or another to have this side hustle. So how do we create the sense of balance necessary to allow us to do it all? Because millennials, we want to do it all, right? Yeah. So you say you're struggling with this. Walk us through that struggle.
Yeah, okay. So there's a couple of things in terms of this. One is, for me, it's just trying to navigate which things I want to pursue and then what am I going to have to sacrifice in order to pursue certain things that come out of this incubator. But I think when I kind of distill that down, what that really means to me is, you know, thinking about, again, the 4 fat guys trying to get out the door at the same time, I need to be really intentional in making some choices. Do I want to do a lot of things relatively superficially, or do I want to do a few things and do a really, really good job at them? And there's a couple of implications of this. One, you know, if I decide that I'm going to be the best, again, air quotations, relatively speaking, the best at a certain thing, the level of dedication, level of time to be able to go in depth, to be able to achieve that level of mastery is going to be drastically different than if I was to pursue 4 things, do 4 things well, have fun doing them. And, you know, I when we compare it to a side hustle, the earning potential of being able to do 4 things superficially versus doing 1 thing in depth might change, right? Like if I'm regarded as the best at a thing, I might be able to command either better rates individually or more volume of business, right? Or do I look to maintain that breadth because I enjoy the wide variety of the work that I do, and I risk volume of sales and I risk the amount of money? So I guess this kind of brings me to something that one of my former mentors brought to me a lot, and I'm curious for your perspective on, and it's the idea of the balance of working on a business versus working in a business. Now, the what that means is if we're working in the business, it means that we're trying to optimize the systems of the way that we do our business so that our business functions more streamlined. So if we're going to continue with my dance play example, working in the business would be creating invoice templates or accounting systems that allow me to do some of that back-end administrative work faster. Working in the business would be building up my clientele list, building up my promotional materials so that I'm better able to shorten my sales funnels so that I've got more volume of business coming in. Whereas working on the business would be that act of making me actually better at the thing I'm delivering. So making the service or the product a better product so that I'm better able to. And I think that there's you can fall into traps either way. You will see somebody who has taken a hobby to a side hustle where you're so invested in the hobby that you spend all of your time trying to make sure your product or service is amazing, but then you don't have an audience or a clientele that wants it because you haven't spent enough time in the business to develop the processes to make it a functional, viable business. Conversely, you come into a situation where you spend so much time trying to perfect the systems, right? So I'm so focused on, like, if I was so focused on building out the sales funnel, creating promotional materials, that I lose sight of actually trying to make my product the best that it can be. I even think about sometimes with this podcast and what is are we striking the right balance of making sure that the content that we're putting out is the best content that it can be versus like the time and energy that you've put in to optimize the ways in which we're going to reach the maximum amount of people. And so I just find that this is a really interesting debate, and it's an ever-changing balance point, and it becomes especially important to consider when millennials are busy, and B, in a world where we're busy, we have finite amounts of time, we need to make conscious choices about whether we're working in the business or on the business, and which of those is best serves us at a given point in time. So I just talked for a long time. What do you think?
In my opinion, it's going to come down to what is the purpose of this business. Right? If the purpose is to make money or to enjoy doing the work, then you are working. I actually think you got them backwards from my experience. Working in would be like teaching the class. Making yourself better at teaching the class would be working in. Working on is creating the systems and expanding the business.
Yeah, I very well could have had that backwards.
Whichever. Yeah. But so like, if you're doing it because you want to make the paycheck or you want to enjoy the thing that you're actually doing, you're working in the business. Okay. And you should be devoting more of your time to that. Okay. If your goal is that, I believe that this business can be large and I can have franchises, or I can, expand and hire more people, then you should be working on the business. But the reality of it is you can't work on the business until you've worked in the business enough, right? One, so you understand the inner workings of it, and two, so that you can hopefully bring it to a point where you're like, hey, Matt, I'm going to hire you to be the guy that actually works in the business so I can go work on the business, right? Because doing both is really, really difficult. And, one of the things that I've always really subscribed to is that in the early days of a business, and again, we're kind of having two different conversations here, because are we talking about building a business or are we talking about a side hustle?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Right. So when we're talking about building a business, the way I've always had success in it is you have to have an idea of, I got to pay the bills. I got to pay the bills, both my bills and the business's bills. And until those bills are paid, you work in the business. Once those bills are paid, it opens you up to work on the business. Okay. So again, swinging back to the idea of the side hustle. Well, the side hustle is purely working in a business. It might not even be your business. So you think about the people that ride share, right? Uber is not owned by any Uber driver, no matter what weird incentive they may think they have. You are working in Uber's business to create an income for yourself. So if you are just purely have a side hustle to pay the bills, this is a moot point. You don't even really need to think about it. But there may come a point in time where you're like, you know what? I don't want to work in someone else's business anymore. I want to work in mine, right? And that's where the passion comes out. That's where the real time balance becomes a thing, right? So explain to me here. You've got it here in our show notes. Balancing for me versus balancing for clients. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, and I think this is just an extension then of the. So it's a really interesting now conversation, and you're right. We're talking about multiple things, but I almost see them as being on a spectrum. I'm almost envisioning a hobby at one end of the spectrum, business ownership on the other side of the spectrum, and side hustle is going to float somewhere in between the two. And I think when I think about for me versus for clients, the reason why I put it in here is I think that when we're trying to navigate, again, the why we're doing this, the purpose of doing this, a hobby, I think, would be 100% for me. I'm doing this for my own gratification, right? For the business, a good business owner should be looking at it from 100% for the client, right? You should be looking to optimize your experience, your client, and you're going to be passionate about that if business is the goal. And then as a side hustle, if it's floating somewhere in between the two, we have the luxury of a little bit more of a combination of doing things for me versus for our clients. And I think that something that I have been, what I've learned about myself anyways, when I'm navigating side hustles is I'm usually feel the most fulfilled when I've done the best, when I've created the best experience for my clients. But I'm not sure that that's always the case, or that everyone necessarily has the luxury of judging their own self-validation as side hustle by how the client feels necessarily. What do you think?
I think everybody takes pride for the most part in the work that we do, right? If you think about the cashier at the grocery store, they want you to leave that line and leave the store hopefully feeling that you got what you came for, that most of your interactions were positive. I don't think there's anybody that works, especially in a client-facing position, that they want that person they're interacting with to have regretted that interaction, right? But it is definitely a very different story when you're talking about working with a business or like a creation of your own, because you feel very protective of that. You want everybody to be happy with whatever they're getting from you. You want them to support you and be willing to share what you've done with the people that they care about. It hurts a lot more to be told your people aren't happy with what they got from you when it is your baby, when it is your business. So there becomes this kind of higher level of expectation out of yourself. And our podcast, like you brought up before, is a great example. I work really, really hard to try and bring you guys as good quality, recording and audio quality and short form content. And not just because I want us to grow and have more listeners and viewers, but because I want you guys to get the most out of things for us. I want it to look good. I want it to be represented and feel like something I'm proud of to put out there. And, there's that old saying, the way you do one thing is the way you do all things, right? So I very much need to know that everything that's coming out of me in all of my pursuits is of a level of quality that I'm comfortable with. So what I want to say at this point is I think when it comes to the side hustle for financial well-being, I think we're going to leave that off the table now. Because just by the way we're talking, it seems like what this has turned into is an episode about creating and working within a business of your own, right? And I think that for most people, if they just want to go out and they want to get a side hustle, get a retail job, get something on the side to make a little bit of extra money, that is your reason why. That is your drive. You need some extra money. There's nothing to be ashamed with that. There's no problem with it. Work the hours you're scheduled, move on. But what we are talking about here is creating something for our own that potentially blends passion and monetary gain in a way that we feel comfortable providing to the people. Would you agree with me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So what that means is that you are now the product. Okay, it doesn't matter what you really sell, but you and your business is now the product, right? People don't choose to work with a company, they choose to work with you. And this is unanimously important for me when I work within my financial education business. People don't care what the crap I have to say unless they trust me. I could be right about everything, give the best financial advice in the world, but if that person looks at me and goes, I don't like your face, they're not going to do business with me.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and I really like that distinction, and I think it's so important because you're absolutely right. The second that we become the least bit passionate about the work that we're doing or the side hustle that we're doing, it becomes about us as the product, and I think that's wonderful to recognize. So, given that, then the way that we're going to best equip ourselves is not only by being the best that we can be and showing up as our best, most authentic selves, but like we need to create a community of people that are going to resonate with our message, with our offering, with whatever that thing is. So I think about a couple of things here. I think it's important, and there's going to be overlap between these two groups, but it's important to generate a community of like-minded people who understand the value of what you're offering. I think it's also important to start to generate a pool of potential clients that are going to be interested in that offering. Like I said, there's very often times going to be a very big overlap, and in a perfect world, those are going to be the same audience. Mm-hmm. That won't always be the case, but in a perfect world, those are going to be 100% overlapping. But I think that for me, where it starts, and then I'm interested, I've got some more suggestions as far as tips on how to find those places, how to find those spaces. I'm interested for your thoughts too. What I would say though is the first step before you even try to go out and find those people, either potential clients, like-minded people, or both, is you have to be able to really, really clearly articulate your purpose and the why. We've talked about why a lot in this episode already, but you need to be able to articulate that, because if you're going to enroll somebody and help determine whether they believe what you believe, you need to be able to articulate what you believe.
Yes. So there's a couple layers to that whole why concept. The why is important because running a business is hard, right? Doesn't matter what you're doing and how successful you might be overnight, you're going to experience challenges. And if you don't have a clear understanding of why you want to do this, those challenges are going to be massively, they're going to be very discouraging. So by having a clear understanding of the greater why of why you want to run a business, it's going to help you overlook that and say it's all worth it, right? If you've ever watched The Simpsons, Homer in his little cubicle at the nuclear power plant has pictures of Maggie everywhere. He says, "Do it for her." If you haven't seen that episode, it's adorable. I suggest it. I'll see if I can find it. But he has got a greater why to why he goes to work and works this job that he doesn't want to do, right? So the why is really important. There's also the idea of creating a firm understanding of what your business provides and represents, right? Because the reason that you would start a business as opposed to just join an organization that is already doing it is because you believe you can do something better or differently from another organization, right? And you need to have that clearly defined so that when somebody says, well, why would I want to work from you? Why would I want to purchase from you? Not that they'll ask those actual questions, but through your interactions with them, that's the essential question that they're wondering in their minds. You need to be able to set yourself apart and provide that level of value to them from the get-go. And, when I say that, it's not like I expect you to just have that completely understood and now you're ready to go, but it is something that you should keep in the back of your mind at all times to be constantly pushing towards a more clear understanding of those things, right? Because your why can change, the way you do business can change, but you need to at least be willing to have an understanding of why you're going to be doing all this work.
Yeah, absolutely. So how is it that you go about trying to meet with people and connect with people? So once you've got that figured out, right? Mm-hmm. Once you've got the why and the understanding and the ability to communicate the value that you and your business bring, where are you going to connect with these people? Like, how are you trying to source them, find them, get to know them?
Sure. So this is something that I think a lot of people really want to fight on both sides of the spectrum. Generally speaking, the people that you will do the most business with are going to be people that are like-minded. Okay. And I think that's irregardless of what you're doing. You could be selling a product or you could be providing a service, but the people that are like-minded to you, if you found value in this product, are probably also going to find value in that product. So if you want to get some of the best advocates for your business, it starts at home, Okay, it starts with the people that you already know. And sometimes, like I've worked with people that are like, no, I refuse to talk to anybody that I know about this business that I'm starting. My friends or my family, I don't want them to be involved. I don't mix business and pleasure. Blah, 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 blah. Fine, if that's the way you want to do it, but it means you're starting from square zero. And if you have good quality friendship and good quality family in your life, they should be supportive of you. Don't be surprised if they aren't, because unfortunately sometimes that does also happen. But I call it, the who principle. Who do you know? Who? Because if you share this business that you're fascinated with to the people that you care about, they will keep it in the back of their mind. Who do they know? How can I support my friend? How can I do this? They may not buy from you, but they'll keep you in the back of your mind. So that's going to be number one. Number two is you present yourself in a way that would want people to come and interact with you. Okay, and this is maybe geared a little bit more to like a service-based business, but people are not attracted to other people. They are attracted to people's ideas, right? So, for me, when I do a podcast episode about, all the things that you can learn about your finances, right? Yes, I'm communicating things about money to you, but in reality, what I'm communicating to you guys is that I know what I'm talking about, that I believe there's knowledge to be shared, and I'm doing it in a way that I hope is easy for you to understand. Those are the things that would make you want to work with me, is the idea of all of that. It's not the fact that I know about money. Maybe it's a little bit, but you know what I mean? So you become your own greatest advertisement, your own billboard, essentially, because you are upholding yourself to the level and the quality of what you want to provide people. Think about the whole, if you've ever hired a plumber, well, if that plumber shows up and he's like, dressed cleanly, and when he bends over, you don't see the butt crack, right? And his van is clean and his tools look good and he knows what he's talking about, would you hire him again? Probably. But if that plumber showed up and he was the epitome of the TV plumber, where he's got the big butt crack hanging out and, his tools are everywhere and he's dirty and maybe he's got like half a tooth missing, right? You might be a little hesitant to hire that guy again, no matter how good his plumbing skills are. So you gotta represent yourself in a way that would attract like-minded people to you.
Have you been hurt by a plumber before?
Do you want me to? I can say electrician. I can give.
I'm just curious, like what half-toothed homie hurt you?
I can't recall the actual movie, but there's a movie where this plumber comes in and he just makes a shamble of the house, and that's what came to my brain.
It's a movie. This feels like a repressed memory. I don't know.
Maybe.
I completely agree with all of those tips. I would double down on the one of like focus on the people that are like-minded. I think that we instinctively, when we get passionate about a product or a service, we want to tell the world because we feel like everybody is going to want it.
Oh yeah.
But in reality, there's just a large group of people, and probably the majority of people, that either A, aren't ready to hear what you have to say, or B, they don't appreciate or understand the value. They're not your audience, right? So you need to focus your time on the people that you know. And with dance play, I had to learn this lesson the hard way, because so one of the areas in which our company engages with kids is through schools. So we have instructors that will go into schools and provide one or multi-day programs because dance is a part of the phys ed curriculum in most jurisdictions. And a lot of teachers, understandably, are terrified to teach dance. And so they can bring us in to do that. Interestingly, what we see more often than not is the schools that hire us are the ones whose teachers appreciate the value of the type of program that we're teaching. What that means is they're probably better equipped than most teachers to actually do it themselves, right? But they so passionately understand the value proposition that they're willing to say, I'm not as much of an expert in this as this team is. I'm going to bring them in. Whereas there are so many schools in Calgary and everywhere that they just don't have the expertise or the appreciation for what we do. And so ironically, sadly, but ironically, their students are getting a worse experience because they don't appreciate the value of what that product is. So you need to really, really understand how important it is to not waste time with the people that are just not ready to hear what you have to say. The second one is you really want to look for opportunities to attend professional events that are aligned with your area of work. I'm coming in hot after having attended 3 conferences in the last 3 weeks. And these can be such great places to connect with people that you're passionate about similar things, or you just share common interests, and it becomes that much easier to connect with people. And typically people go to conferences to learn, they also go to connect. And so there's that inherent, it's one step easier to being able to break the ice than maybe it otherwise would have been. And so that can be a really wonderful opportunity to start getting to know people, getting your name out there, and ensuring that you have the ability to start networking. And what I would say at those types of events, spend the time, go to the receptions, go to the socials, go to the parties, go to the meals, because those are the times that you're going to meet the people and build the relationships.
You mean I have to talk to other people if I want to grow my business?
You have to talk to other people if you want to meet other people.
Dang it. All right.
What a travesty.
Okay. So this all makes sense. And I think I want to start a business. I want to start a side hustle. I think I have the thing that I'm passionate about. How do I do this?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the first thing is you want to do some research and find out if there is somebody who is making money doing that thing already. There either is or there isn't. Either way, it tells you something. If there is, you can start understanding how that business operates, and then you can work to either replicate successes or understand your niche. Yes, to all of our American friends, it is niche, not niche. As the bane of my existence. Anyways, doesn't matter. So if there's somebody in that space doing the work that you do, understand your niche, understand what separates you and the additional value proposition that you bring doing the thing. If there's nobody in that space doing that thing, well, great. It means it's an untapped market, but if there isn't someone, you need to slow down, not speed up. What I mean when I say that is when you notice that there is nobody in a space doing a thing that you want to do, maybe it's because you have this like genuine inception idea that no one else has had before. But unfortunately, what's more likely is that others have tried and maybe not been successful. So when I say slow down, it means do more research, understand why what you are thinking of turning into a business doesn't exist yet. And because if there's nothing that people have to compare to, it's going to be that much harder for you to communicate your value proposition. My dad will tell this story of he'll have clients call him and say, well, Tom, we want something that's really innovative. And then my dad will go away and his team will create something brilliant and brand new, and they'll bring it back to the client, and the client will say, ooh, I'm not sure. Where has that been done before? And he'll be like, you wanted something innovative. What the hell are you talking about? By definition, innovative means not done before. But people have a really hard time anchoring any sort of value proposition without something to compare it to. So identify the passion, find out if someone's already doing it and being successful, making money, and then, be able to articulate your niche within that, what sets you apart from anyone else doing it. And then lastly, you need to spend some time thinking about, if you were to make money doing this thing, would you still be as passionate about it as you are right now? And I think those are really, really key things that if this is a journey you want to go on, that you need to ask yourself, because it's very easy for our passions to not become fun anymore when we're trying to monetize them.
Yeah, that's very true. My dad spent many years as a mechanic, and he did that because that was the family lineage. My grandfather was a mechanic. My great-grandfather was a mechanic. And, he loved cars. He does not love cars anymore. after years and years of being a mechanic. And it was actually one of the big reasons he pushed me so hard not to become a mechanic, is he says, I can tell you love them and I don't want you to lose that. So, there are businesses sometimes that will do that to you. And if you can find and strike a balance between the passion you have for something and its ability to make you money and turn into a business, there is no more rewarding thing out there than melding those two worlds. But it is a little bit of a balancing act for sure. Right. All right. So this episode felt a little bit all over the place, but that's kind of, in my mind, what starting a business is like. It's a little bit all over the place.
It's never a straight line.
No, but it's also immensely exciting. So if there's something that we talked about today that you feel like was an unfinished thought, or you want more information, reach out to us and we'll try and provide some insight to that. What I will say is that if you have passion for something, it doesn't immediately need to become a business. It can start off and stay a passion for a while, but don't close off the idea of it becoming a business. You might already have something that you've done for years that you're like, this is just something I do for fun, but you're like, hey, I wouldn't mind making a little extra money. Take a look at that. Maybe that's something you could do. All right. So as kind of our closing question here, Matt, I think this is a really cool one that you came up with. Would you rather a world where everyone had a side hustle, or where no one needed to have a side hustle, and why?
So I bounce back and forth on this quite a bit, and I'm going to be honest, I peeped at your answers so that I could play devil's advocate to you. I would love to live in a world where everyone has a side hustle. And the reason for that is I think that one of the most powerful ways that we can demonstrate an impact in this world is when we're able to communicate our passions in certain ways that allow other people to validate your passions with their wallets. And I think that for any sort of good to be achieved in the world, there has to be enough people that believe in that to move that initiative forward. And the best way that you can demonstrate whether or not people believe in a movement is with their wallets.
Sure.
And so I would love to live in a world where everybody has a side hustle that they're passionate about, because that would demonstrate the value of our world moving forward in a good way with social initiatives that are backed by people's passions.
I like that. One of the big things that I am dissatisfied in the world is it seems that the vast majority of the companies that exist are not there because they make our world a better place, or they bring more creativity to it, or something that benefits the world. They're there because it's an industry that exists out of necessity and to create a profit. And that's kind of the nature of business. I'm not knocking that. But I think one of the things that excites me most about a world where everybody had a side passion, a side hustle, is the opportunity for innovation and creativity to become the overwhelming businesses in our world, right? Like if everybody had, something they were bringing to market that solved a problem that was so genuinely unique, that was beautiful, that was something that you could see every inkling of passion in, I think that would just bring so much more joy to the world than this overwhelming idea of, well, buy the new iPhone because it's new. I just think it's useless. And maybe I have a problem with consumerism, but I don't think that's the case. I think it's more that I feel like so much of the product and service in our world is bland and made out of necessity, instead of necessity being the driver for creativity.
I love that.
Yeah. All right. Well, as we kind of close off here again, I think this was a super interesting episode. It's going to be one that we continue to talk about because we seem to be revisiting this idea of hobbies and skill sets and businesses over and over again. And I think that just comes from the nature of who we are. So my gratitude for you, Matt, is that you went somewhat of a traditional route in your in your education, right? You believe very high in higher level education. You've worked in the corporate world in various fashions, in various organizations, but you've never let that become something that stopped you from wanting to create something more out of your passions. And I think that is something that is just absolutely wonderful, because you hear about people that enter these career paths and that's all they'll ever stick to. And they would never go out on a limb and create a business of their own. They'd only work a job. And to go out and say, I'm going to build something outside of the norm in my industry to bring that next level of something into it takes so much guts. And I just admire that in you. And I love the fact that you share that with us and you share that journey with me almost all the time.
Thank you. I'm feeling really grateful for you. It's similar in a way, but I just am so appreciative for how dedicated you are to learning, to being curious, to growing. And I think that the projects that you take on really, really exemplify the fact that you are so dedicated to being and learning as much as you can about a thing. And then your desire to monetize those things usually comes out of like a desire to share that with other people. Mm-hmm. And then, you're able to create such excitement and action in other people as a result of your excitement for things. So I just really appreciate just your relentless curiosity and desire to learn things and how you're able to create so much excitement in other people as a result of.
I appreciate that very much. Thank you. All right, guys, we want to thank you for joining us for this episode of the Millennials and Community Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the words that entered your ears or that you view on YouTube. You can find us in all the places, all the social medias. We ask that you interact with us there, help us grow. If you found value in today's episode, I ask that you share it with somebody that you care about. Help us spread, help us grow so we can continue to bring you some great content.
Make it enter someone else's ears.
That's right. He's being weird. We've been recording for a couple hours now. So thank you guys so much. Matt, besides that weird comment, you want to say anything else?
No, I'm really just stuck on the entering ears thing. And so, best to just leave it there.
Bye, guys. Hi, guys. It's Carlo here. Thank you for listening to our latest episode. It's the support of our community like you that allows us to continue to grow and make this into something truly extraordinary. If you enjoyed today's episode and you would like to listen to it without the interruption of ads and maybe even experience some bonus content, I'd invite you to join us on our newly launched Patreon. And if maybe that's not something you can do right now, please consider liking, subscribing, sharing, and commenting on places like YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, Facebook, all that good stuff. You'll find us under @Millennials and Community for pretty much all of those. Thank you again for listening, and we'll see you again soon.